China is boycotting Australian universities. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.Heise here and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee, let's look at this news.com.au article because, well, it was written by Ali Foster, but it's drawing attention to something a lot of us have suspected and can have concerns about. China boycotting another industry in Australia. We're hearing it again and again and again. Not iron ore yet, but now university education. And if we jump over to this older article here, this is from ABC, and I'll link to this as well in the comments below. We can see, well, how dependent some of our universities are on international student fees. Now, I studied with a lot of international students. Frankly, I felt sorry for them for the value of money they were getting. At least in my architecture course, it really seemed like a rip-off. It really did. You know, what they're making them pay for what they got, particularly if lecturers recycled their content. And I've known that people at my age who've come over here and studied a postgraduate degree, they've been lured to Australia. For all this hope of a better life, a better quality of life. Just do this expensive course, spend 50 to 70,000 Australian dollars. Doing an MBA, and you wind up working in aged care. That's Australia, guys. That's the way it's going right now. Our economic complexity isn't there. I'll bring up this website from the Observatory of Economic Complexity, and I know I refer to it a lot, but for some people this may be the first time they're introduced to it. We're ranked 73 in the world, everyone, out of 137. We just don't have the complexity of other nations. So when you hear people prattling on about, third world nations, I tell them to look up Hans Rosling and some of his talks because, your data's probably a little bit out of date, guys. And where this comes from is the manufacturing capacity or the complexity of what we're manufacturing. And that will tie into the demand for, jobs and other things. Australia is a natural resource exporting nation. We're one of the biggest in the world with certain resources. Coal, it's all the east coast. Iron ore, it's the west coast. A bit of gold in between. The majority of that is going to China. China is our biggest trade partner. They're the most important trade partner for Australia. We're not as important to China. We're not as important. But we can see here at, going back to university education, look at the Uni of Sydney here. Guys, 884 million. This is from 2018. University of Melbourne, Monash University. University of New South Wales, UQ, all of them right up there, all the G7s, and you go down to the tier below. My alumni, QUT, there's a big chunk there dependent on that international student dollar. So the universities love it. They do what they can to bring them in. It's a source of revenue. It's interesting, if you've had any experience in the university system, it's frustrating seeing how much money is devoted to marketing and advertising and non-education and non-research positions. It really is. So this is the latest thing. China takes aim at Australian universities with the latest boycott. A new ploy from the Chinese government could see an Aussie sector, which is already hit hard by the pandemic, suffer another crippling blow. And I'm not at all surprised. Because remember, it's not just the universities, it's also all of the student accommodation that is being propped up by this. Because a lot of the students will come over and then they'll have to get a place to live. They'll either rent in a fully furnished place, they'll go to a student accommodation, or they'll do the Aussie student thing and share house it. But then they also have to buy fridges and all of these things. And that's all part of the economy, everyone. They're all bringing money over here. I remember we were looking at the properties down in Hobart that were going down, the student accommodation properties. And some of the university lecturers were working in the universities, but they'd also put in all of their passive income generation into student accommodation. I saw someone shared a Twitter post, all these blokes bragging about how many millions of dollars worth of property they have. They've put everything into houses or everything into apartments. I mean, talk about going all in, guys. Aren't you meant to spread out your income streams and your investments? So, Australian universities have already been hit hard by the crisis. But now a new ploy by the Chinese government could see institutions across the country suffer another crippling blow. Many Australian universities rely on international students as a major part of their revenue, with the crucial stream abruptly cut off by the pandemic and subsequent border closures. The international education sector brought in $37.5 billion to the Australian economy between 19 and 20, with China accounting for a staggering $10.5 billion of that figure. Now, 37.5, let's bring that over to this, and we can see our coal exports are 57, iron ore is 48, gold is $16 billion. We bring up this chart here as well. We can see, as you know, just to get an understanding, tourism is 60 billion, guys. So the international education sector is a big chunk of our economy. Don't dismiss it. And the Chinese are bringing in about 10 billion of it. Not a small amount, guys. And that's not counting all the flow-on effects as well. The trickle-down effects, you might say. The vaccine rollout has sparked hopes that international student levels could soon be on the rise, but unsettling reports coming out of China indicate Chinese students may not be among those rushing back to our universities. Well, another thing, and this is something I've mentioned a few times, I suspect, well, the rise of the Aussie dollar. You know, we're sitting at, what are we now? We're at 80 cents, so we hit 80 cents, we're a little bit below it now. What are we? 77 US cents. So why would you go to Australia, even to one of our G7 sandstone universities, when you can head to the US or the UK, or probably the US, you go to the US, and get better value for your money. Yeah. There's a lot of prestige associated with the university you go to. It's, I'd say, more so in Asian cultures than Australian culture. I don't think it makes that much difference to what you can learn. That's an entirely different thing. It's all up to you. I mean, you could probably get a better education sometimes from the internet, or sadly, sometimes the education you get at university is other stuff you cobble together. You're paying to join the club. That's what you're doing at university, guys. You're paying to join the club and the alumni, and you've got to take as much from it as you can. But that's kind of another topic. Reports surfaced earlier this week that Chinese agencies were being encouraged by local authorities not to recommend Australia as an international study option to students, according to the Sydney Morning Herald. These reports were initially only coming from smaller regional areas, but now university sources have confirmed the reports have spread to agencies in Beijing and Shanghai. While there's been no official confirmation from the Chinese government that their students are being steered away from Australia, and I bet you there never will be. Group of 8. Why do I keep calling Group of 7? It's Group of 8. It's because I didn't go to those universities, that's it, you know. It's all that this repressed jealousy. Group of 8 Chief Executive Vicky Thompson, I'm getting confused with the Seven Nations study anyway, said there was definitely something afoot. Either agents have been told not to direct students here, or they've been told not to mention Australia as an option for study, but with no official notification from anyone, she told the Sydney Morning Herald. Ms. Thompson said it was very concerning development for Australian universities. Well, you may have to cut back on some of those useless admin staff. You know, those staff that just create more paperwork for the staff and the students. I know it's going to be hard. And this is my own bias coming through here, talking with lecturers back in my day. You know, there are these people that are running courses with hundreds of students, bringing in decent money to the university, and they don't even have an assistant to help them with their printing or paperwork. It's a bit of a joke. You know, when you look at how much money they're helping bring in just for the cost of a course, because even what we pay in HEX, that's only a proportion of the funding they get. So, this appears to be the latest in a series of attacks from China, with the country imposing a series of bans and crippling tariffs on Aussie exports, with beef, wine, barley, coal and timber just some of the industries under fire. And earlier this month, Beijing took another swipe at the struggling university sector, with the country being accused of spreading disinformation in a bid to deter students from travelling down under. China's Ministry of Education reportedly told students to make a full risk assessment before going to Australia following reports of racism, anti-Chinese attacks, and concerns about the pandemic. Federal Education Minister Alan Tudge hit back at the claim, saying Australia was one of the safest and most welcoming destinations for international students. I reject China's assertion it is unsafe to visit or study in Australia. This is disinformation, he said. The one racist attack I ever saw or heard of when I was at university, I just heard it in passing. It was an Indian lady, and she was attacked by an Indigenous lady in the streets of Brisbane. She was quite frustrated because they wouldn't bring the plastic surgeon to her in the hospital before they stitched up her face. I think this random, just walking past in the city, random just, attacked her, smashed a bottle on her. So, I feel sorry for her. That's not what you want when you're walking around at university or going home at night time. Hopefully Brisbane's getting a bit calmer these days. Although, with economic troubles, with a recession coming, that's when this type of rubbish starts to rear its head again. Australia holds itself to a far higher standard than most other nations. We don't tolerate racism, and we certainly don't tolerate violence. It comes after Chinese state-owned media, the Global Times, reported that a series of vicious attacks on Chinese students had occurred in Melbourne, Sydney and Canberra on 3 consecutive days in January. The outlet claimed the incidents posed a serious threat to the personal safety of Chinese students who chose to study in Australia. While the recent attacks from China are a concern, it hasn't stopped Australian universities already starting to see a rise in international students. I mean, this is the thing, seeing the stories of universities bringing people into the country, when you've got Australians trying to get back in who can't, it really is terrible optics, isn't it? It really is. Earlier this month, NCA Newswire revealed that more than 1,000 international students had quietly been allowed to jump the queue ahead of 40,000 Australian Aussies waiting to come home. People seeking an exemption to the travel ban must provide evidence of a compelling case and meet exemption categories, which include students in their final 2 years of study of a medical, dental, nursing or allied health professional university degree. Those students must also have a confirmed placement at an Australian hospital or medical practice that starts within the next 2 months. Okay, so that sounds rather selfish on our nation's part. Okay, wait, they're doctors. Let's keep them here. Or they're on the verge of becoming doctors. Let's bring them here. We need more nurses. Ms. Thompson said, but it still doesn't look good. Ms. Thompson said universities within the Group of 8 had provided supporting evidence for students that fitted the exemption criteria. She said rural, regional and remote communities relied heavily on overseas student graduates from Australian medical schools. If medical students can't get back into the country, then this will impact the pipeline of new doctors into the system over the next few years, Ms. Thompson said. This will be a shortfall. So there we have it, everyone. China, well, quietly directing international students away from Australia. It's going to have an impact on our university. Maybe they'll just have to, find a way to cut their costs. Maybe not building all the brand new buildings all the time. Maybe getting rid of some of those staff. My experience at university was just seeing the rise in needless paperwork. Like when you run an event, it's crazy. Or talking to a lecturer who got funding to bring in a speaker, and then the university just took a big chunk of the money away as admin fee and didn't do anything. It was ludicrous. So when he was doing it through all the proper processes, he couldn't afford to pay for the people that he was getting donations for to bring speakers in. Yeah, fantastic. Anyway, guys, please like, share, subscribe to the channel. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. If you're a fan and enjoy the content I cobble together here, there are a few ways you can support us. You can join us on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us using our affiliate links from Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve or AussieBroadband. You can buy merch from HeiseSays, use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. You can also join MeetRx or SelfWealth and help us that way. Take care. I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.